Well, welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to talk about how to respond to difficult laryngoscopy, what to do to improve your view. So first of all, let's just talk about different views that we can see with laryngoscopy. I really like and appreciate the Cormack-Lehane classification, specifically the Cook modification that divides this kind of into easy, restrictive, and difficult. Now, the easy airways are described as a grade 1 Cormack-Lehane view or a 2A. So grade 1, you see all of the vocal cords, that whole of that pyramid structure. And then a 2A is where you see part of the vocal cords and the arytenoid cartilage. And that is considered typically an easy intubation, that view. Those views are attributed to high success rates. With direct laryngoscopy, I'll emphasize that. With with the restricted is the next class. So we just did grade 1 and grade 2A as easy. Next, we enter into grade 2B, Cormack-Lehane, and grade 3A. Now, 2A is where you just see the arytenoid cartilage. You see none of the vocal cords. And then a grade 3A is where you see the epiglottis, but the epiglottis is flipping up somewhat. So you don't have as far to work around. It's flipping up towards you as you try to engage that hyoepiglottic ligament, whether or not you're getting there completely. But you're at least able to see that it'll be easier to get that tube up. And that's considered restrictive. Would be more difficult. Now, then difficult is 3B, where you lift up the epiglottis in the best view, when you go to engage the hyoepiglottic ligament at the base of the tongue, the epiglottis, and you try your best blade tip location and can't get that epiglottis to flip up at all. So it's kind of hanging down in your way, or even, so when you go to pass that tube, you have to go way far up and then under that. And then a grade 4 is you can't see any of the airway anatomy. So when we're talking about a poor grade view, we're talking about typically of a 3B and up to a 2B. It's really hard if you can't get to see any of the structures, not any parts of the epiglottis, for you to troubleshoot that. What I would say is, if that's the case, I would pull back completely and then make sure that you just gradually work your way down the tongue, as we discussed in that introduction to direct laryngoscopy video. If you haven't seen that, you can go watch it. But if you get a grade 4. Now, typically, grade 4s are not very common. Like 1% of intubations in the OR can't obtain a grade any better than a grade 4 view during direct laryngoscopy. So not very common. Typically, we should be able to at least get to see the epiglottis. Now, once you get your view of the epiglottis, now we'd like to talk about how we can improve that view. And this has been discussed by many airway experts, but I really like how George Kovach put this forward. And then Scott Weingart of EM Crit kind of named this the Kovach Kata. And kata is this, like, I'm not a martial arts guy. I wish I was, but I'm not. But this kata is this idea in karate that you do these sequence of motions over and over again, so that you can execute them with perfection, with speed, in perfect technique. So that was a really great way for me to think about how I could troubleshoot this difficult airway. So when we walk in with a laryngoscope, the first thing that I would suggest is before we get to the troubleshooting the difficult view, is make sure your approach is appropriate. And what I mean by that is, insert the blade. If you're using a Macintosh blade, just insert it to where you can no longer see the tip of the blade, and then lift up. And then if you don't see the epiglottis, you know you need to go further. You know where you are. So then we would just advance that blade a little further into the airway, and then lift up. And we're going to work that blade down till we get it down to where the epiglottis meets the tongue. And at that point, we're going to see what grade view you have. So if I only have a grade 3A view, where I see the epiglottis, but it's not lifting up. It's really great to think of sliding in and just slide in a little further, and just make sure that to play with your blade tip location to make sure that you're actually engaging that hyoepiglottic ligament. If you're not, if you're too far up on the tongue, you'll lift and the epiglottis won't come up. If you're actually a little too far down, you'll actually push the epiglottis closed. So you need to be in that right location. Then enters in George Kovach's Kata. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, you can correct me in the comments if I'm not. I'm sure I'm messing it up. But the first maneuver is head. And that is with head lift. Now, I would advise that if you don't have C-spine precautions, that we always integrate head lift as we do direct laryngoscopy. But consider, am I doing appropriate head lift? Can I increase that head lift? Remembering that sniffing position is our ideal location for intubation. Now, after head, then we have neck. Now, neck is for doing external laryngeal manipulation. External laryngeal manipulation is manipulating the Adam's apple, the thyroid cartilage. So as you're intubating, the target we're looking for is the glottic opening, which is inside the thyroid cartilage. So what we can do is this backwards pressure. Now, we'll hear this burp, back up right pressure. Primarily, it's pushing the Adam's apple on the patient posterior, pushing it back to bring the glottic opening more into view. And I find that is best accomplished if I just take my own hand, reach around, and push on the thyroid cartilage and manipulate it into a location that I'm pleased with. Then I can take an assistant's hand and say, okay, I've just done that. I'll put your hand here and I'll manipulate. Now hold it there. And I find that works well because then I can troubleshoot it very easily as I play with the perfect location or the best location that I could see from that posterior pressure. So as we insert the blade, we insert just a little till we can't see, lift up, advance down a little further, get the tip of the blade into the vallecula, and then I'm going to head, to lift the head up. Next, I'm going to external laryngeal manipulation, pushing in on that thyroid cartilage, mostly posterior, maybe a little bit to the right. Then taking an assistant's hand and holding that if that was helpful. Now, if that wasn't helpful, the next thing we can do is go try to scoop up the epiglottis. Now, when we're scooping up the epiglottis, we need to make sure that we're not levering back. We want when we're pulling in the direction of the handle, we want to be applying pressure in the direction of the handle, okay? So we will, as we attempt to that. So I guess I skipped a step. So I'm supposed to go head, neck, hands, scoop, pull back. So we'll go, we did the head, we did the neck, and then the hands. The hands part is lifting. So you can add more lift by just bringing your two hands. So maybe your assistant's giving you extra laryngeal, external laryngeal manipulation. You can take your two hands and then just give a little bit more lift. Make sure you're pulling in the direction of the handle. No levering or you'll traumatize the airway. Next, if you still don't have a grade 1 view, then we can try picking up the epiglottis. And going in. Once again, we want to make sure that we're not levering back. So this could be picking up the epiglottis, two hands with external laryngeal manipulation, with elevating the head. Now, human head's heavier, so you can have some flannels or blankets here that you can stuff underneath the head, or you can use your belt to hold the head up, which is often done. Now, the last thing of pull back is really talking around video laryngoscopy. And which particularly is talking about hyperangulated video laryngoscopy. George Kovach has some lovely videos describing the difference. Often people look at these devices and say, oh, well, they look kind of similar because they compare them here up by the handle. But we're talking about the business end, which is the end that goes into the mouth. So you can see the end that goes into the mouth is actually quite different when we compare these two, as I try to get that into my view of that camera over there. So they're quite different. This is a hyperangulated. This is a King Vision with a hyperangulated blade on. And this is a Macintosh-style video laryngoscopy. So with the hyperangulated blade, what often happens is that individuals get a really great view, and then they can't pass the tube, which is really frustrating to have a great view, a grade 1 view. But what happens is they insert this into the mouth, and I'll do a video on video laryngoscopy, but they'll insert it in the mouth, and they'll go way too far down. And as they go far down, they get this really close-up view, I hope you can see that, of the glottic opening. And then when they go to try to pass their tube, they can't get it up enough. They're just continually putting it into the esophagus. What George kind of enlightened me on this is that you kind of make an S out of the airway, that you're coming down through the oropharynx, and the laryngoscope is creating this 1C that's up through, because we have this hyperangulated, and then the trachea that we're lifting up, and then the trachea is going down this way. And even if we get the tube into the glottic opening, it's really hard to advance. So what he proposed, which I think is great, is to pull back. And what you're going to do is, when you insert that in, rather than getting that really close view, is we're going to get more of that view with the tip of the blade in the vallecula, where you're only getting the glottic opening only taking up less than 50% of your screen. And in this location, you'll find that you're able to much easier pass that tube, if I don't get stuck. So it wants to advance in. Now remember, as you put that tip in, pull that stylet back, and then if you need to, you can let you release your pressure to stop making such an acute C, that you can pull it out and decrease the angle as you advance that tube into the depth. And if you want to, then you can go get your close-up view by all means. So that pullback is in reference for video laryngoscopy, particularly. All of the rest, where we do head lift, so I'll do that once more. So if we go in with just direct laryngoscopy, if we go in, and we advance down the tongue until we find the epiglottis. We try to get that tip of the blade where the epiglottis meets the tongue, the vallecula. We apply pressure in the direction of the handle. And if this only gets me a view that's not a grade 1 view, the next step is head lift. Then after that, we're going to go to the neck. Then we'll go with a little extra pull. Make sure that we're pulling in the direction of the handle. After that, we can try scooping up the epiglottis. And if you're using a video laryngoscopy, then you can go ahead and pull back and get a far away view. That's really helpful. Thanks, George, for those pearls, and for Scott Weingart putting those together and advertising that a little bit more, at least naming it the Kovach Kata. So until next time, we will see you down the road.